Hey, good morning or good afternoon, depending on when you're watching this. I'm here again with Andy from SixProg, talking about another discussion topic relevant to contractors, consultants, and freelancers. And so, yeah, good to chat, Andy, again.
Hey Matt, how's it going?
Yeah, all good, thank you, all good. Today we're talking about CVs, controversial topic potentially, and should contractors need a CV? I'll let you take this one first.
It could be a short answer. I think it's a resolute no. I think as soon as a contractor, freelancer starts showing a CV to an end customer, they're basically saying, here's my employment history. And if you're asking them to be your next customer, but you're showing them an employment history, what you're actually doing is you're saying, will you be my next employer? Which, as discussed last time around, IR35, bit of a no-no to go around getting employers as things are. But that's me. I could be wrong. What do you think, Matt?
I agree with a lot of what you're saying. I think if you, as a contractor, as a consultant, if you engage that way and you offer them your CV, then you're very much trying to buy yourself a job, which is what IR35 is all about, and therefore you're probably working inside IR35 where you like to admit it or not. But to perhaps change angle slightly on that, what if you are that end client and that's just how you're used to screening candidates, if you like, how you're used to engaging with this type of supplier? What should you do then if not the CV?
Yeah, that's a good point, because of course in all of this it's two-way. You've got to be malleable and be able to work with people. I expect that clients will move to different models. I'm seeing it anyway with what we do. We only work on profiles, and clients are quite happy to work on that basis.
Yeah.
So I think it will change. I think there are some, putting it politely, some dinosaurs out there who have a very fixed way of doing things. Interestingly, the pieces that I pick up on are when people want to see a CV for reasons which make no sense whatsoever. The classic one being to look for gaps.
Right.
And I have a particular problem with that, because if I can see gaps in somebody's CV, it can mean one of two things. One is which they're unemployable and difficult to find work for, perhaps true. The other is that they're incredibly successful and have chosen to make some life choices and take some time away from working to spend doing sports, activity, other hobbies, family, whatever it might be. So I think the people who use CVs in that way are using them wrongly, and they're not helpful. The other challenge that I find with CVs that I think is especially bad if you are the recipient or if you're the person asking for a CV is that as soon as you do that, if you've also provided some form of description of work with it, the person sending their CV will immediately change their CV to mimic what you've asked for. So all you've actually done is tested the person's ability to copy and paste some text and reword it slightly to meet what you need, or have tested their ability to not bother doing that entirely. So I'm not sure in either example that it's worth asking for a CV.
I think it also presupposes a solution to the problem that they're often not articulating fully in, let's face it, in what is often a generic job description, a description of the solution rather than a description of the problem, and an invitation for experts to tell them how they would solve that problem. I think it comes at it from the wrong perspective in many, many cases. Not all, but in many cases.
Does producing a CV, the opposite side, producing job descriptions that don't get updated, does that actually hinder people thinking about the problem?
I think it does, because they've already gone through some decision-making process, and that they're trying to fill a gap of some form. They're trying to solve a challenge or a need that they have, and they think, oh, it's somebody with these skills could probably help us. And then you get to the job description, and people apply on that basis, saying, yes, of course, I've got 5 years of a technology that's only existed for 2 years. How can I help you? Tell me what to do. And I think, it does, really does steer the conversation from that outset by putting that out there. Whereas I think if they were honest and said, we're an organization, we work with these technologies, we're trying to do this, we're trying to get this new project off the ground, we're trying to do this integration, or whatever it may be, and then invited people to contribute, they clearly value the expertise that they're trying to acquire, yet they're almost not giving them a chance to demonstrate that expertise in a way that is specific to their projects, specific to their needs. And I think that, unfortunately, it makes it harder for them to make the decision on which contractor they should use. But I think ultimately it's also not helping either party really understand the value.
There's a really interesting company I was talking to a few months ago now, but they're a blockchain firm, and the idea was to use both the job spec and the CV as the same entity. So you create this log of information that says Matt and Andy delivered some work, and then it sits on our timeline of things that we did, as well as when we move on from that and we're replaced by somebody else, they can just take on the same text, the same work, which I kind of found quite interesting, because it does mean that if individuals move from employer to employer, it's an easy way to say, yeah, they worked here and they did this stuff and it was really good. And then you move on. I'd really like to see it applied somehow to a business-to-business market, because as we know, people are more than happy to say that they did a little bit more than they maybe did, and clients are also happy to play the opposite game. So I think it'd be really interesting to see both a sort of a ledger of deliverables versus skills, but it should be the same thing.
Yeah, I think it's tricky, because I think the way that you would add value for one client may be slightly different to another, even though on paper, on the way they're typically described, they may look very, very similar. So I would be wary of reducing people to purely a description of their skills alone.
The other piece that has always bothered me about CVs is that they produce absolutely no personality whatsoever. And when you're working with somebody, the key thing you want to know is, will I get on with them? Will we be able to do stuff successfully together? And you can't tell that from a CV. There's nothing whatsoever on 2-3 sheets of paper that says if that person's going to be a fit for your business, which is another reason I dislike them.
So what should people do instead then? I think it sounds like people requesting CVs should actually state the problems they're trying to solve. And then people hoping to pick up clients, what should they do?
I'd like people to work on reputation, actually, to work on the basis of somebody saying they work with me, they're good, and then have meetings on that basis. I think if that were how intermediaries worked, so recruitment agencies and consultancies do that quite well. They'll introduce people onto a project because they know they can do the project. I think that the rise of ATS tracking, CV reading machines has reduced the value of a CV completely. And having a good recruitment agent who knows what you can do, who tells the client that, is incredibly valuable and far more useful. So that's what I think people should do. And I think clients should trust their suppliers to talk to them and tell them what they can do and how they can help their project, whether that's via a recruiter or not. They should do that instead of sending bits of paper to one another on email. That's my personal feeling.
And I'd love to know, if you're watching this, what you think. As a contractor or as someone hiring contractors, what do you think about the CV? Is it a useful tool, or has its day passed, especially in this mode of engagement that we're now seeing? I'd love to know your thoughts. Drop them below.
Cool.